So right now I'm in Burbank, California, right outside of what used to be the Warner Brothers Ranch. If you don't know, Warner Brothers has or had two facilities here in Burbank. They have Warner Brothers Studios, which is the one that most people are familiar with the water tower. And then they had the Warner Ranch. And this is where you would have found the Christmas Vacation house, the Lethal Weapon house, the Partridge family house, a lot of history here at the Warner Ranch. And just about a little over a year ago, it was announced that they were going to be tearing down this entire lot, and then they were going to be building new offices and sound stages. And so yeah, that's what's going on. I was out here a little over a week ago, and I took some footage, and then now we're back here today, and a lot has happened in just a little over a week. And so I'm going to share all of that with you. And it is definitely a sad day if you are someone that loves old school movies like I do. If you're someone that loves filming locations, this is a sad day for us. And so yeah, I'm going to show you what's going on. So let's go see what we can find. So you never really could see through the fence before, but since they've started like ripping out the trees and tearing down shrubberies and stuff, there's now spots all throughout the fence where you can see in. If I could just get my camera to focus, you can kind of see right over there. Those are some of the houses on Blondie Street. And again, kind of hard to see through the fence, but this right here is the backyard of the Lethal Weapon house. You can now pretty much see right through the front gates because they've already removed so many trees and whatnot. Right there is one of the machines that's going to be tearing up the ranch. And then just beyond that is the gas station, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. You can see there's already big piles of dirt from the stuff that they've already started tearing apart. And then just beyond that pile of dirt, you're not normally able to see those houses from the street, but since they've torn so much stuff out, you can now see the Blondie house and the Oliver house. A lot of famous stuff filmed at those houses, and we'll talk more about that. And then right beside those houses, those tall buildings, those are probably most famously seen in the opening credits of Friends. And again, we'll get into all of that in a little bit. So this is Blondie Street, and you're gonna find a lot of recognizable houses here, starting with that one right there on the corner. That's known as the Bel Air house, and it can be seen in the background in Christmas Vacation and Lethal Weapon. But the Bel Air house is prominently featured in the Richard Pryor comedy Moving, and to be honest, I really haven't heard anyone else talk about that, but I'm gonna be doing a full video on that movie in the near future. And right next door to the Bel Air house, you'll find the Partridge family house, or you would have found the Partridge family house. As you can see, it's already almost completely been torn down, and there's now just a couple of walls left standing. But this is where the house would have been where the Partridge family lived. And that house was also famously used as the Kravitz home on the TV show Bewitched. This is where the nosy next door neighbor, Mrs. Kravitz, lived. This house is also where Mrs. Elkins lived on the TV show Dennis the Menace. Now, the original house burned down in the 70s, and it had to be rebuilt while they were filming the Partridge family. In the 1980s, this house was used in the TV show The Scarecrow and Mrs. King. It was also seen in the background in Christmas Vacation, and used on the TV show Life Goes On. It was also used as Sean's house in the movie Monster Squad. Now, just to the right of the Partridge family house is the Blondie house, which was used in the TV show Father Knows Best. But more exciting for me, it was used as Mr. Wilson's house on the TV show Dennis the Menace, which is a show that I used to watch all the time on Nick at Night when I was a kid. But the Blondie house is probably most famous as Jeannie's house on I Dream of Jeannie. It's also been featured in the TV shows Hazel, the Monkees, and the Partridge Family. Sadly, the original Blondie house also burned down in the 70s, and it's since been rebuilt, and now it's being torn down. Now, one house over to the right, you'll find the Oliver house, which was used on the Donna Reed show, another show that I used to watch all the time on Nick at Night when I was a kid. But this was also the Mitchell house on Dennis the Menace. This is where Dennis lived with his parents. How cool is that? And then just to the right of the Oliver house is the Little Eggbird house, which was featured in multiple episodes of the Three Stooges, Gidget, and the Monkees. Now, those tall buildings that you see just to the right of all the houses, those can be seen very briefly in Vacation. Now, the original Vacation, not Christmas Vacation. They can also be seen in the background of Monster Squad, very briefly in the background of Hocus Pocus, and there was also an episode of Chips filmed on Blondie Street where you get a really good shot of those buildings. It was actually a Halloween episode. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, those buildings are probably most famously seen in the opening credits of Friends, and that's because the Friends fountain used to be located on that grassy area just across from those buildings. So when they're standing in front of the fountain, you can see those buildings right behind them. Now, you might have noticed in that grassy area right across the street from all the houses sits a large swimming pool, which sadly is now empty. That pool has been featured in the Partridge Family and the Monkees, and it was also used in Gremlins. They built an entire structure around that pool and used it for the YMCA. But I think this pool is probably most famous for Christmas Vacation, when Clark is staring out the window, fantasizing about getting the new family pool, and that's when Cousin Eddie shows up and ruins his fantasy. So it was right here on this diving board where Cousin Eddie was bouncing up and down. I can't believe that the Christmas Vacation pool is here, and any day now, it's just not going to be anymore. Now, to the right of the swimming pool is the Allen House, which was featured in, and I believe originally built for, the movie Small Soldiers. It was also used in the TV show Pushing Daisies. Also, you're going to be able to recognize a lot of these houses, and really just this entire area, from the series WandaVision, which was heavily filmed here on the Warner Brothers Ranch. Now, directly across the street used to be the Deeds house, from Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, also featured in the Three Stooges and Gidget. But in the 1980s, that house was torn down and replaced with this one. This right here is the home of the Griswolds in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Now, the house has changed a little bit over the years, but it's still recognizable. It was right here in the front yard where the entire Griswold family stands waiting for Clark to turn on the Christmas lights. And it was also right there at the curb where Cousin Eddie's emptying his, well, you know, you've seen the movie. Now, this house has also been featured in an episode of Beverly Hills 90210. It was featured in the movie American Beauty, and it can be seen in the background in Hocus Pocus. And right next door to the Griswolds' home, you'll find the Lindsay house, but I like to refer to it as the Lethal Weapon house. That's because this was the home of Roger Murtaugh and his family in Lethal Weapon. And what's really cool about this house is it's a practical set, and they actually filmed inside of the house as well. Right here is where Roger Murtaugh comes walking through the front door, and then his son Nick was over here in the living room watching TV with a friend. Right back here, his wife was in the kitchen cooking dinner. And then in the back of the house, that's the dining room where Roger's kids do that rap song during dinner. And let's not forget it was in the front yard of this house where that crazy fight takes place between Mel Gibson and Gary Busey at the end of the first Lethal Weapon movie. And it was also right here in front where the toilet comes flying out of the house and lands on the hood of the station wagon in Lethal Weapon 2. Now, although I like to refer to this as the Lethal Weapon house, long before that, it was the main home in the TV show Hazel. The Lindsay house can also be seen in episodes of The Monkees, Dennis the Menace, Gidget, and Three Stooges, and it was also featured in Christmas Vacation. This was the home of Todd and Margot, the snooty next-door neighbors. And the last house on the block might be one of the most famous. This is the Bewitched house, where Samantha and Darren Stevens lived on the TV show Bewitched. Now this house was also featured in Gidget and I Dream of Jeannie. It was Randy Quaid's house in Moving, and it was also used for an episode of Home Improvement, which I remember extremely well because it was kind of a big deal. This was Benny's mom's house, and Tim and Al agree to fix a gas leak at the house for an episode of Tool Time, but they end up blowing the house up, and everybody was freaking out because they were going to be blowing up the Bewitched house. And how did we learn about such a thing without social media? Well, my dad read an article in the newspaper and he was showing me, look, they're going to be blowing up the Bewitched house and everybody's freaking out. So see, even in the 90s, we were able to learn about things without social media. Now, on top of all of those amazing TV shows and movies that I just mentioned, this house was also featured in Christmas Vacation. This was Clark's childhood home. When he's stuck in the attic and he's watching old home movies, we see him playing in the front yard of this house. Now, there's really not too much to see, but I did want to come around and show you the backside of the houses. This right here would be the backside of the Griswold house, which we never do see in the movie. But if you look on the side of the house up near the roof, notice that hole? That's where the window was that Clark sticks his head out of when he's stuck in the attic. And up until just recently, that window was still there, but they've just recently ripped it out as they prepare to demolish the house. Now this is the backside of the Lethal Weapon house, or the Lindsay house. You can see they've already started to rip apart the roof. And then right next to it, this is the backside of the Bewitched house, and there's really nothing to see back here. Now, if we come around the corner, I did want to point out the backside of the Partridge family house. Even though this house is almost completely torn down, I still think it's worth mentioning the backside of it because, as I mentioned, this was used as Sean's house in the movie Monster Squad, and they used the backyard when the squad is hanging out by the treehouse. Now, if we head to the front part of the lot, right near the main entrance, this is the gas station, and this has been featured in countless movies, most notably Monster Squad and Gremlins, but it was also featured in the Cyndi Lauper music video for The Goonies Are Good Enough. And that's another thing that I really never hear people talk about, and I think I'm going to do an entire video just on that, even though there's not really a lot to see, but I love that video, and I can't believe that the gas station is right here in real life, and I'm devastated that this is going to be torn down any day. Honestly, I just can't believe how much film and TV history is here on the Warner Ranch. Originally the Columbia Ranch, which I haven't mentioned yet, but this was the Columbia Ranch long before it was the Warner Ranch. Now there is so much history here, not just from the 80s and 90s. Of course, that's what I'm focusing on, but there's history here long before the 80s. Personally, I think this should be named an historic landmark and this should all be preserved, but I know that's not going to happen, and obviously since they've already started tearing it down. But yeah, this is our history right here, and any day now, it's going to be gone forever. Well, it's been just a little over a week, and almost everything has been torn down. The Griswold's house, the Lethal Weapon house, the Bewitched house, the gas station, which I'm devastated about. The swimming pool's been filled in. Everything is gone. Just about the only thing that remains is the backside of the lot where the sound stages are. And then those tall buildings, the Oliver house, the Blondie house, the Bel Air house, and just a few walls of the Partridge family house. Oh, and the little Egbert house as well. But I'm sure all of that's probably going to be gone in the next couple of weeks. Another thing that's changed here in just about a week is they've got this fence now going all around it. You can no longer walk down the sidewalk on the side of the lot, and they've covered up the gate that used to be here on the corner. There's no more Warner Brothers sign. You can see the machines are in there ripping it apart. Looking around in here and just seeing all the piles of dirt and gravel and the lack of houses and trees, it's really depressing. And it's all just going to end up becoming office buildings and sound stages because movies are just going to be made in front of green screens now, and they're just going to use CGI. They don't need facades anymore. They don't need sets. It's all just going to be CGI. Man, what a bummer. Oh, the church is still there as well. But like I said, along with all the rest of this, the church, all these houses, it's all going to be gone any day. Now, of course, I'm really sad that I had to make this video, but I wanted to share this with all of you because I know that there's some movie fans and some filming location fans that aren't here local that would be interested to know what's going on with this movie history. So, unfortunately, this is what's going on. Well, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.